Hey, greetings and welcome back to Code Quickie. Today we're going to be looking at mixins, modules, and accessories. So once again, please like, share, and subscribe. And all the assistance that you'll need, please reach out to me in the comments. I'll put the lab in the video description. I love to help everybody. And I love everyone helping me as we go on this journey. Right, to get certified in Ruby. And just like a brief overview of Ruby, Ruby is once again an amazing programming language. It's designed for the human developer in mind. It takes a lot of code that you write in a lot of JavaScript in other languages. Yeah, I said JavaScript. That right, and in Ruby, it turns things into one line, right? And then it takes a lot of complex things that we get. It has the data structure that is made for complex expressions, such as containing all the data about a building in one piece of data, right? You can see that in modules, classes, and mixins, right? And the functionality to really interact with such complex data, such as the building, placed into that data type meaningfully in a meaningful level, right? You can use modules and attribute accessors to do like that. So let us get started. Let's see how this all comes together. Right. So first things. Hold on. Let's go by just going over public and private methods. So say you're in a team of developers, right? You have this class here, you have this module here, right? And you want other people to use it, right? Say class is building, right? And then right, so it has all its methods and it all has all its attributes. There's going to be some things in that class that you don't want other team members to touch, right? This is say this method is the inner functionality, which depends on some data from the module that you required that depends on another class. It's a derived class and they don't understand and you using there's attribute reader on it, there's no writer on it, and there's a lot going on that you don't want them to touch. What you're going to go ahead and do is provide for a private method, right? I just wanted to go over private method first and just run it, right? Just to show that all right, 25. Right? We can't work with private methods, right? So if you want to if you want to make sure that your coworkers don't use code that they're not supposed to, right? You want to use private method, or like say for writing a library, you don't want us using that code, right? Oh, we have private methods right now. Say for example, there's code that you want your users and users to use, your developer and users to use, your coworkers that you can use, right? We go ahead and run this code. We go ahead and call the public method on the class, right? When we run it, right, and we try to make a method call, what we get is print out the instances can access me like so. Great. Right. So now when we want to now before when we first started working with classes, right, that the attributes we needed methods in order to access them. However, we can provide for these keywords attribute reader, attribute writer, attribute accessor, right? Attribute reader allows us to read an attribute. Attribute writer allows us to write to an attribute, and then attribute accessor allows us to go back and forth. So if we go ahead and run this code, let's see what this is like. Little errors. Just like to go over the errors with you guys. Right, so we see that we print out the name, right? The name is Mac, right? We changed the job name from attendant to Bryce, right? I'll change it from attendant to Mason, Masonry. all those in the masonry industry, right? And then we change both from Idaho to, let's change, right, because that's home, right? You want to change it to Utah, right? We're gonna code again, right? We see that the name, we're able to read it, is Mac, right? And then both are able to edit and read it at the same time. However, we try to write to something we can only read to, or read to something that we can only write to, right? We're going to get an error. And let's just see what happens if we actually try to print out this class by itself too, right? We're gonna have something interesting, right? We could look at that. Wow, look at that. Wow. So in Ruby 2.6, this wasn't used to be the case. They would not tell you about this information in Ruby 2.7, right? Something, especially if you wanted to keep something private, that would be very interesting. That would be very interesting. So you can't just read it from the by accessing the attribute, but say if you really wanted to get in there, see what's going on, now you can. Hopefully they just go back to reversing this. I think 2.7 was just released, so hopefully, but I see there's 2.7.2, so there must be a reason for this. I think what it is, they see that there's less hacking and more debugging going on. So really interesting, really interesting. There's probably somewhere in the documentation where you could have this set back to original, but that is okay. And there's probably a method for this, but I think it's out the scope of this lab today. All right, so now what we want to go ahead and do is create a module, right? So next, we want to go ahead and do is create a module, and then modules, what we have is like a class is like a toolbox and method. So classes are just for like are just to provide a structure for complex and data, and turn that into something meaningful and something very, very useful that end user programmers can access. Modules are a library. Modules work as a library. You're going to see that classes and modules act the same, but modules are meant to be library, right? So you can't create instances like we're building, and you can create an instance of builder 1, builder 2, or character 1, character 2 in the game. Modules are more like a library. Say, for example, where we have here physics library, as we have in this example, right? We have the physics, bionic laws, right? So say if you want to use modules, say for characters going through different dimensions, right? In the bionic world, right, they use the bionic laws. In the regular world, they use the law of DC. And we can see like so, if you go ahead and clear, just run this library, or just run this, right? And that was really comment this was supposed to be comment. All right, more data like so. You go ahead. That's a capital P. Interesting. Very well. Right. So we print out the laws for my library. When we're using my library, we're going to use physics, and then we have our regular laws, right? We have DC laws instead. Okay. That's okay. So, and what this is important, the concept that we have here when we get introduced to this double colon, right? It's not a namespace operator. It's really just a concept of namespacing, just allowing our variables to be separate, because there's a way that we can print out physics. We can print out physics and then refer to the physics constant, right? When we see upper cases, they're actually, these variables are known as constants. Well, they're not variables, they're going to be constants. They're never supposed to change, but it's going to refer to the attribute coming from module my library, and we're going to be able to see that with the include, right? How we can do that with include, right? So, but first, right, but before we include stuff, right, we want to make sure they exist in a program, right? So some modules that we have, say as math, right, we are able to work with them immediately. Say for example, math PI, right? We want to go ahead and print that, right? You're able to work with immediately, but other things like the date, right? We're going to need to import that module. Well, and how we do that is we're going to use require. So when we get require, and now we ask for that date, right, what we get is something very, very interesting, 2001, 02, 03, right, and more. And yeah, this is very interesting what Ruby does with dates and times. So definitely gonna have to look into that. But as you can see that once we require that module, we're able to get it. And when we're using the require statement, it's just important to make the whole module lowercase. Right, so I did mention before that we can use the include statement, or when we use a certain statement, we don't have to mention the module when we're trying to gain access. But this is, I'm just going to show you because you're going to see it. I do recommend not to do this because once again, you might have date, and then you might say include time, and then you're going to have an issue, especially when you're coding and there's a lot of code. You might just end up saying include time, and then this will refer to something else, and it's going to throw you off by a lot. So we want to take advantage of those namespaces and that original part that Ruby provides. So when we go ahead and run this, right, now say we use the include, right, and then we have our method here, right, we don't have to say test module and then the namespace operator, even though it's not technically a namespace operator, right, we can just go in, right, go in, use JD like so. So really for simple app, I wouldn't use it for any. I think I'd rather just be on the safe side and just use what Ruby offers me. I think Ruby is developer friendly in tandem to developers coming from all different languages, providing a syntactical solution, right, for different developers. But this is my case. I love different. I love when I see different. I love using P instead of put. I love using where I love using the percentage syntax instead of the syntax that's really common to other languages. So what you want to do, you want to take advantages of those, definitely differentiate, definitely know what you're looking at when you're dealing with Ruby code, right? Ruby makes it easier, and it can make it even easier. So we just want to take advantage of that. And then finally, you just want to end up in mixins. So like mixins are like the answer to multiple inheritance, and multiple inheritance is what we have like in Java, where we can have one class and then it could have two subclasses, and that's not really ideal. However, with modules and classes coming together, what we can have something very interesting. So we have a module here, right? We have master, and we have master as its class, right? We go ahead and run this code. Oh, right? What we end up having, the thing with require, it kind of includes with different files, so there's kind of more of a setup when it's coming to, you just really just can't take a module, grab it from another file. When you're using like load, require, include, extend, right? There's a lot of files that have to get involved, and there's a lot of setup for that. However, when it comes to multiple inheritance, like you're seeing in Java, right, what we can end up doing is we use two different modules, right? We end up using two different modules, right? Let's make another module computers, OS, and then fave would be Linux, let's say, and put OS, fave, all right? We go ahead and run like so. Clear. Let's just clear it again. We go ahead, run like so. Ruby Linux, that is very nice, right? And then you wouldn't want to use an include statement, right? Because if you say fave, which fave are you referring to, right? You include languages, include OS, right? That and the third, don't want to get thrown off, right? Someone might see, hey, in a file there's module OS fave, they might not be able to see the languages file with the module languages, might miss out on that, think it's referring to something else, might make a conditional comparing against Ruby, so Linux, and then that and the third, and then you probably want like a private method, right? That you wanted the attribute to be private too. However, Ruby 3.7, that and the third, as you saw earlier in the episode, was able to show those attributes a lot, right? So even though it sounds confusing, right, the code here is simple, the code here is straightforward, and the code allows you to get going where you need to get going. As you saw as I went through the episode, like there's a lot of issues that I ran into, but it's just a simple change, right? And this code is relatively small. Look at that. I just created two modules and a class, and all in like about 20 lines of code, and we're able to do a lot there. So really, Ruby, much appreciation for Ruby. So once again, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, reach out to me. Any issues, any questions you have. I seem to learn a lot for these exercises from Ruby. Also want you guys to get to my level and beyond when it comes to Ruby. Thanks for watching.